realistic numbers presented to us up until just a few months ago when Chief Harris, pointed out that there was some additional revenue that could be raised. It would not necessarily be self-sustaining, however, might be worthwhile as far as investigating. In addition to that, this past summer, with this past go-around with the first stimulus package, there was an opportunity to bring on some additional firefighters with federal grant money that would be covered for the first 5 years, and then we'd have to pick up after that, which would potentially give us the ability to bring ALS on to the fire department at a much quicker timetable at a less cost. But of course, we haven't done anything in relation to adequately looking at what the real costs are going to be in relation to training, whether there is an interest on the current staffing of the fire department to go out and get the certifications necessary. Again, with the new hires, you would go out and you get someone require those types of certification, which would allow you to meet the mandates under the state guidelines. So what I'm proposing is that we form an ALS advisory committee to report back to the board, basically in short order if we could, depending upon the availability of information, and report back to the board as to the details as what needs to be done. I think the committee should be comprised of not just members of the board and the administration, but also members of the firefighters union, so that everybody is getting the same information. The board will be getting information that will be provided by a collective group of people with a vested interest in this. I think it's important for the public to know that I believe it's the consensus of the board that if we go into ALS, that our first desire would be to have the North Reading Fire Department provide the service. We've heard from the chief that the providing ALS service is becoming more and more essential, and one of a very few communities are now around here that do not provide it through our own departments. So when it comes to mutual aid and those types of situations, we cannot necessarily match the mutual aid with other communities. So that's certainly of concern and interest. So I think it behooves us to take a good look at it. This may very well allow us to get closer to the two in, two out from a public safety standpoint of our firefighters when they're fighting fires, and also allow us to provide a better service whereby the town could realize the benefits of additional revenues to be collected by it. By the same token, if we can't provide it, if the fire department is unable to provide the service for whatever reason, we'll be able to quantify that and determine what course of action, if any, needs to be taken. But I think we really need to take a comprehensive look at the issue. I think going forward, we cannot sustain the current level of public safety that we're providing with the current revenue streams that we have, and particularly in light of additional cuts in local aid. And that this is, I think, a way that we should be investigating it, looking into it, and making some sort of a proposal to the board as a whole, and maybe town meeting in the community later on. But it needs to be a collaborative effort. It should not be construed in any way, shape, or form that we're trying to take anything away from the North Reading Fire Department and the services that they provide. But what we're looking to do is provide the most cost-effective way of delivering services to the residents and those people that live, work, and travel through North Reading in the most cost-effective way in meeting the public safety needs. So I think we need to do it. We have to take a look at it. And I've been sitting here for years, and we haven't done it. And I probably have been the single biggest obstacle in relation to going to this, because I was always told that it would carry its own weight. And until Chief Harris and Deputy Warnock presented to us a while ago that it really doesn't. Okay, now we know. Now at least we're talking honestly with each other here. And now let's try and quantify it and see what we can do and what the timetable associated with it would be. So I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we form this ALS advisory committee to the board. I would suggest 7 members. Town administrator and the fire chief, 2 members of the Board of Selectmen selected by the chairman, member of the finance committee, president of the firefighters union, and 1 firefighter designated by the president of the firefighters union. And that the committee be commissioned and report back to the board by January 15th, because it's almost 3 months.
Mr. Delaney, then Mr.
I agree with Mr. O'Leary. I think it's a worthwhile effort to put forward here. I know it's been talked about for some time, and I think now it's time to go out and do the work and gather the information, do a cost-benefit analysis, and to determine whether or not it can be done in-house. And as Mr. O'Leary said, I agree that the first preference would be to allow the North Reading firefighters to handle the ALS. But if it can't be done, and there's unwillingness in the department to do so, we have to investigate whether or not it's worthwhile to do it, to outsource it. But I think the legwork needs to be done, should be done, and hopefully everyone joins in and welcomes the opportunity to investigate what could be a revenue source for this community. So I'm in favor of forming the advisory committee in this regard.
Mr. Vino.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with Mr. Mr. O'Leary and Mr. Delaney. Not because, how am I going to explain this? Not because it shouldn't be looked at, but I am going to ask to not be on this committee because I feel this is just an attempt to come through the back door to remove the ambulance from our firefighters. And I disagree with doing that. Mr. O'Leary did make a statement that we cannot afford what we're doing now. I believe we can afford what we're doing now. What we're doing now works fine. We do not have ALS, I understand that. And I think if our firefighters could not or do not want to do it, I say leave it just the way it is. We have an ALS system that's, to my knowledge, is working fine. I am, as I said previous, as you gentlemen know, I am opposed to doing this, because I can see this as a move to remove the ambulance out of the North Reading Fire Department, not out of the building per se, the structure, but to remove the North Reading firefighters as ambulance personnel. So I would be opposed to it.
Mr. Yule.
Yeah, as a town, we have to do due diligence. We just need to make sure that whatever program that we have in place, it's being utilized optimally, and that it's being covered by, it's covering the safety of the community. When we have a cost issue and we have options, we have to look at all the options to make sure that what we're doing, at least justify what we're doing, is the best thing. And so having a board like this, an advisory committee like this, will help us at least go in the right direction. I would not like to see it move away from the fire department. I think that would be ideal, but we have to know that we're doing the best thing for the community by doing that. I would be in favor of an advisory committee.
I too very much support it. Joe, it seems to me that a few years ago we had this fire study,
Yes,
and then
That was on
we
the building.
formed a committee. I think you were on the committee. And as I recall, one of the top priorities was ALS.
no, that was on the building. We had the,
Am I correct in that?
no.
I'll have to go back and look.
No, that was
I
a
don't think
committee
so.
on.
I think you might be confusing a little bit. We had a study on the police department, the
Right.
operations of the police department. I don't believe we ever had a study on the fire operations of the fire department.
Yeah.
Did we? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
we
I
did.
don't recall.
Yeah,
Okay. And the recommendation was looking at ALS. That was one of the.
that was one of them. There were, I think there were three, right?
Right, okay.
Three key. What? No, in the report, yes, but then there was a committee formed to go through the report. I think Mr. Dardino,
No,
Mr.
I wasn't on that.
You weren't on?
What, was I on that? I don't recall.
I wasn't.
I'm glad someone
Yeah,
remembers.
I'm glad somebody remembers. There's so many committees.
And I thought there were that committee had three recommendations, and I thought ALS was one of them. I may be mistaken, but I thought that was what was on it. I can go back and
Was
find
Mr.
my
Walpin
notes.
on it too from the finance committee? Mr. Walpin was on it too from the finance
Oh.
committee. I remember a a recommendation coming from Mr. Walton at some point in relation to
So
the
I think, I clearly think this is something that we should go and take a look at. And if we can find a way of implementing ALS within the system, I think that that's what we should be doing. And I agree with Mr. O'Leary. There's no intent here to take this away from the fire department. What we want to do is find a way of getting it implemented within the services of the fire department. And at the same time, you know, as Steve said, finding a way of perhaps increasing the manpower to the point where we have better coverage and we can meet the 2 in and 2 out.
Come closer to it.
Or come closer to it, yeah.
We did do a workout on ALS, we presented it to the finance committee, and Mr. Malakowski brought it to the board. At that point, it was changed, and they said they didn't want to do it at that point. I brought back the information of how we could add people and so forth.
Well, at the time, I don't think we had the opportunity to add people through federal grant, right? So, I mean, the whole objective here is, obviously, with the budgets the way we are, we just can't, obviously, jump into something without finding a way of,
When I brought it forward, it was to raise the revenue stream, at the same time go for a stimulus package to add personnel for each year, to bring us up to 8 more people in the department.
Mhm.
Hopefully, the revenue stream would compensate us while the stimulus package carries across, so we can do all the training.
well, then we should bring that information back to
That's what I'm
the
hoping, this
committee.
advisory committee will pull this information together, bring it to the forefront, and take a good hard look, and also have representatives of the fire department union there, so that whatever comes up, they're well-informed, and also, you know, we will eventually have to sit down with the union and work out how the training's gonna take place, how they're gonna be compensated, what, if there is gonna be a stipend, additional stipend, all that sort of stuff will have to be worked out, and what I want this advisory committee to do is to be able to bring to the board some sort of an idea, and I want, you know, short of a negotiation on it, but some sort of an idea as to what the potential cost of this would be. And up to this point, I don't think there's been a concerted effort on the board's part, the administration's part, to really tackle the issue. I think the economics of the economic times are forcing us to look at things a little bit differently. It's forced me to change my position. So let's do it, and let's find out, let's quantify it, and truly quantify it, and do it in the light of day here, and have some transparency on it, and then give a report to the board by the 15th of January, and see where we're at. I think maybe the 15th of January won't be as far as I hope we're going to be, but I expect we can make some pretty good headway on it, because I know that there's been a lot of groundwork done. So, but I also know that, you know, there's an awful lot of discussion that has to take place in relation to how's it going to be implemented. So,
I have a package that I've run forward.
I'm suggesting you're on the committee. That's good.
Yes,
Okay.
I can barely see you back there, so.
I'm sorry, can't do much about that.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Leary alluded to that, the fact that it would be comprised of someone from the union and additionally the president of the union. I asked that that they be considered, because the union president may not necessarily be the most informed on the subject. We would like to be able to pick the individuals that would serve on that to best explain our vantage point of the issue. I'd certainly like to be able to pick the members of the board that are going to be your representatives, and I don't think we're going to have that latitude. So I ask that same courtesy, that we be allowed. It's not an issue within the union as far as not having the president involved, and it just gives us more flexibility.
My reason for specifically looking for the president of the union, because I look at the president of the union as the elected head of the body of the firefighters, to be, and I'd like to have them represented there, and then one other person selected by the president of the union, again, after consultation with the membership, as to who the other person should be. That would be an internal affair amongst you guys as to who the other person would be. But I think it's very important for the credibility of this particular advisory committee, again, this is the board's advisory committee, to have the most senior representative of the union present, you know, and participating.
If think where they're coming from is they have an ALS committee formed at the